Let me tell you a little bit about Michael Crow. He's been the president of Arizona State University since 2002, and there's no question that he is the force transforming Arizona State University into one of the leading metropolitan research universities, a university that is combining the highest level of academic excellence and inclusiveness of a broad demographic, much like Georgia State, and also a maximal social impact. He's trying to weave these things together to make Arizona State a truly outstanding example of a public university. He has created, under his leadership, he's created more than 12 transdisciplinary schools and also very large-scale research institutes like the Biodesign Institute, the Global Institute of Sustainability, and the Flexible Display Center. And he's also done tremendous innovations in the humanities and social sciences. During his tenure, on his website, it says that they tripled the amount of research expenditure. He mentioned this morning that they're now at $380 million a year in research expenditures. Prior to joining Arizona State, he was executive vice provost at Columbia University and was also a professor of science and technology policy in their School of International and Public Affairs. He's a fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration and a member of the National Advisory Council on Innovation and Entrepreneurship and the Council on Foreign Relations. In 2009, Time magazine named him one of the top 10 best college presidents. There's no question that Dr. Crow is building Arizona State University into a prototype that he is calling the new American University. And that's what he's going to be talking with us about today and relating very much to what we are thinking about at Georgia State. I want to mention, and I want to thank, by the way, Pam Barr and Paul Alberto. This is particularly a wonderful day because it is the very first anniversary of the unanimous adoption of our new strategic plan by the University Senate. And it's a particularly important day then that we hear from Dr. Michael Crow.
Thank you. So thank you, Risa. Can everybody hear me all right? Is the microphone too high or too low? First, let me make sure that everyone in the room realizes and understands completely that it's really exciting for me to be here and an honor to be with a group of individuals that have devoted their lives to the same thing that we in Arizona have devoted our lives to, and that is a public university that's actually a public university. And what we mean by that is, and our spiritual sort of connection to this and our spiritual connection to each other is that we believe at Arizona State University that you can design a university that can be amazingly accessible and not have to give up one single thing about excellence as a part of that development of access. That means then that, and I think this is if you don't hear anything else that I have to say today, is that there are a few of us, Georgia State is one, Arizona State is one, there are a few others out there that are universities that are really at the front line of America's future success. There, of course, are the great research universities of the past who, through each and every incremental decision that they make, become further and further separated from the broader questions of educating larger numbers of people from every background because they decide, public or private, and I was at one of these universities for many years, they decide to make decisions wherein they believe that their achievement or their excellence is a function of who they exclude. That somehow that's the pathway to excellence. Well, it is a pathway, it's a simple pathway. If you can handpick the students that are in your student body from a group of people that want to be in your student body, and you only have to take a certain number of them, if you fail at that model, then there's something wrong with you. If you maintain what we have done at Arizona State University, which is we have the admission standards almost verbatim of the University of California at Berkeley from 1950. In 1950, to attend what is today considered by many the penultimate, unbelievable, high-achieving, greatest public university ever made, in 1950, to enter that university, you needed to have taken all the hard courses in high school, gotten a B or better in all of those courses, taken 4 years of math and 4 years of English and 3 or 4 years of science and all the other kind of stuff that most of us or all of us in this room took. And if you got a B or better, then guess what? You were admitted. You were admitted. What does it take to get into UC Berkeley today? You have to be in the upper 4% of your high school class. And if you take that model, we've even played this game, if you extrapolate California's population into the future, and you run that model 50 years into the future, you have to be in the upper 0.5% of the high school class to be admitted to the University of California at Berkeley. And there are many people that find that model completely satisfactory. I think that model is completely satisfactory for a single institution, but will be a complete social disaster if we end up driving our public universities into one of two categories. I heard a prominent educator from the state of Texas say to me once that the University of Texas, with its multiple campuses, had a research campus in Austin and some not very high-achieving access campuses in other parts of Texas. I didn't scream out loud, but deep down I screamed very loudly. And I say to myself, you're a fool, an idiot, or just a simpleton. I wasn't sure which one. Why couldn't all the campuses of the University of Texas have levels of excellence and levels of access? And I'm not saying that the University of Texas at Austin isn't diverse or doesn't have levels of access. It does, but it only admits the upper 10% of the high school class. And so the fact that they graduate 75% of their students and the fact that they have a 92% or something like that freshman retention rate, while the University of Texas at El Paso has a 5% four-year graduation rate and a 24% six-year graduation rate, must be just because the students that are coming in there are weaker. This is blunt. That's a fallacy. The design is weak. The structure is weak. The assumption is weak. And so you all have the same mission that we do. You're in what I call rebuilt Atlanta, since it had a previous life, which was terminated. And we're in a city of 4 million people in Greater Phoenix, which no one actually understands why it's there. So I often refer to it as the world's largest mining camp. And so we even refer to ourselves as the college that the miners want to get going to help their kids to not be miners, even though there's no mines. And so we have a very similar mission. Big, diverse city, fast-moving city, fast-moving social dynamics, structural, cultural, and economic and social constraints that have to be overcome. Lots and lots of diversity that has to be embraced and addressed. And so how do you do all of that? And the single most important thing that we started out with 10 years ago was to outline a differentiated vision. So many, I apologize for this next joke because it turns out that the G in the word generic is the same G that's in the word Georgia. And so it turns out that many public universities become GSUs, generic state universities. That should be considered to be the fate to be avoided at all cost. So in our particular case, being a GSU historically, we have been working to establish our institution as not the New American University, but a model for a new kind of public university, what we call the New American University, where our first objective in our vision is that we will not be measured by who we exclude, but by who we include. And one way to simplify this is we intend to take a broader cross-section of students than the more selective public universities, not open admission, but qualified students. UC Berkeley qualifications from 1950 we think are pretty good. And we intend to take that total cross-section, which it represents a huge economic diversity and a huge ethnic diversity also, and we intend to outperform, we're not there yet, but to outperform those that believe that selectivity is the path to public university success. That means graduation rates, retention rates, quality of graduates, what those graduates go on to do, collegiate learning assessment evaluations of their advanced learning skills and problem-solving skills, all those kinds of things, because that's what a public university was designed to do. Now, my undergraduate college was a place called Iowa State University, where I was a javelin thrower there for several years. Most of you think there's people still throwing the javelin? Oh, well, there were 40 years ago. And so that university was a university founded under the Morrill Act. Justin Morrill, the congressman from Vermont that was able to actually get the Morrill Act established once the southern states had withdrawn from the Union. He could get the votes that he needed because the southern states didn't want it. And so they were out for a while, as you know. And so he was able to get this thing through, and then these land-grant colleges were set up and established. And I went to one of those colleges, and it instilled in me this notion that the college, the public university, is set up for public duty, not for public duty only to the gifted, not for public duty only to those blessed with some kind of manifestation of significant intellects during their late teenage years. That we had a broader mission. So that mission is that we will build a great university not built on exclusion, and that we will pursue research. Now, everybody thinks they're doing this, that they'll pursue research and discovery that benefits the public good, because many scientists are delusional enough to think that anything they do benefits the public good. And they must not have read much of German history or Russian history, because not everything a scientist does is for the public good. But how might you actually measure the attainment of the university's research performance against some indicator of public good? And we all know this, we're all, Jim's worrying about research and economic development. We're worrying about research and economic development. You guys are worrying about how to help Atlanta to be a more successful city and so forth and so on. And we do that through our products, our main product, people, our second product, ideas, and our third product is a very sophisticated term called stuff. So we produce people, ideas, and stuff. And what we want to make sure is that the peoples, the ideas, and the stuff that we produce is focused and actually measured against some attainment of the public good. And then this last part, which we debated for a long time and has been modified a little bit as we've learned the hard way lessons, is assuming responsibility. Here's how academics assume responsibility typically. They get onto bully pulpits, act like preachers, and tell everyone else they're stupid. If only you'd spend more money on public K through 12 education, everything would be good. Well, they spend lots of money in certain places, and there's nothing good coming out of those places, and there's lots of money being spent. So it can't be only about the money. And so the notion is why don't we stop pontificating as institutions and start actually assuming some responsibility? So let's pick teacher education as an example. So we started as a territorial teachers college in 1885 when, other than the Native Americans that lived in Arizona, very few others had come to Arizona at that point. We offered no degrees until 1925, when we were authorized to become a state college to offer degrees in education. We were a state college until 1960, when we were allowed to offer something other than education. So we have a long tradition, and we had no funded research, not a penny, until 1980. So just to put things into perspective in terms of the evolution of the enterprise. But back to this teacher. So if you're actually assuming the major responsibility, that is, you actually have ownership, an underperforming K through 12 system is whose fault? Well, the school districts, Yes. The states? Yes. The school district boards? Yes. The principals? Yes. The superintendents? Yes. The teachers? Yes. The families? Yes. And the university. Preparing what? Teachers, principals, and superintendents not up to the task. Not up to the task. And so if you begin assessing yourself relative to being responsible, and you start deciding that you're going to be responsible, you'll change things and how you do them. So we took our College of Education and we dismantled it. And we asked it to be restructured, focused on only one thing. It didn't mean we don't want people talking about educational policy, or we don't want people talking about learning modalities or what have you. It's that we want someone in the university to design, build, and produce a mechanism that can produce the finest teachers that we've ever created, where teachers actually have the ability to teach at the elementary school level, math, science, history, whatever it happens to be, at the highest levels that our society needs. And our educational teacher training program was not doing that. And we were certifying 1,600 teachers a year out of ASU. It's a very big institution. We have 60,000 undergraduates and 13,000 graduate students. And we're not a system, that's the university. And so we restructured our education college into a teacher's college. We exited 45 faculty members from that college. 20 retired and 25 went on to do other things in other colleges and other schools within the university, like our School of Social Transformation and our School of Transborder Studies and our School of Engineering and other areas, where they plugged in there and then re-plugged back in through a university research institute called the Learning Sciences Institute. And then we said to the Teachers College, you better get in there and start taking some responsibility for the social and cultural vitality and well-being of our community by altering the performance of our teachers and our principals. So we solicited money from private foundations and created a teacher tracking program to track how each of our teachers are doing with their students once they graduate from us. Professionalized the school. We're doing a joint venture with Teach for America with a $20 million contribution from a Phoenix resident, where we're altering how people get selected to even become what was education majors and now teachers college majors. Before, it was a race by students, and some of you aren't going to like this, doing anything they could to avoid the subject called math, to somehow get over there into the education school where they wouldn't have to worry about that or wouldn't have to worry about it very much. How about changing how we do it so that's no longer an issue? Changing who you pick to go onto the teacher track. Taking teacher education and turning it into a massive, highly focused, like medical school, where you're producing doctors or professionals. Not that we're not producing professionals, not that they don't act in professional ways, so don't play on my words in your mind. I'm not suggesting that. What I'm suggesting is that it's a redesign of our responsibility. We were underperforming. We had to therefore put the mirror on ourselves. And this is a project that we're right in the middle of, and I have to tell you, it's very hard. But I want you to understand that this was, at least in our case, an effort to establish a unique vision. Now, to get there, we drew from the literature of university designers, of which there's lots of people, from Clayton Christensen to Jim Duderstadt to Frank Rhodes to long ago in Spanish philosophy and Spanish universities, Jose Ortega and others who have been great designers and conceptualizers of what universities are, what they're supposed to do, how they're supposed to work. And so we drew from all this literature, and I outlined in my inauguration 8 aspirations that we would work toward. These are the 8. There's nothing overly exciting about any of these. There's nothing particularly unique about these. These are not the first time. These is not like, tablets off unknown mountains, or things like that. That's not what this is. Leveraging our place as a design aspiration. Most universities are agnostic to their place. How about making place the single most important thing about the design of the institution? Our city, it's a big city like this one, but it's not like this one. It's different. different social dynamics, different culture, different government, different view of government. In Arizona, you can have every wild idea that you ever imagined, actually make it all the way into law. And then the same people that advanced that law, like the president of our Senate, was recalled from office. Mr. Pierce, correct. He's not in the Senate anymore, the author of the anti-immigration laws in Arizona, recalled by his own constituents. It's a wild place out there, but so leverage our place, transform society, like what I was talking about relative to teacher education, value entrepreneurship. So when I was at Columbia, I was kind of the entrepreneurial guy, and I was like under constant fire for even uttering the word entrepreneur in the faculty senate meetings that I would go to. And eventually they finally figured out that I wasn't going to go away. They weren't going to fire me yet, and so they had to basically then get into a word debate of what did entrepreneur actually mean. And luckily, because it's one of these bizarre French words, it's got a lot of meanings. Look it up. It's not about business. It's about designers of enterprises and the advancement of enterprises through risk-taking. Well, we're an enterprise. In fact, we have this model at ASU that we think of ourselves as an enterprise. And so it's valuing entrepreneurship, which we think is enterprise-driven change, stimulating in the university and outside the university. Now, I won't go through all of these, but fuse intellectual disciplines. We actually made it a design aspiration to not be trapped by the social constructs that no one even remembers what they came from. Sociology. Who's sociologists? Well, we don't have a sociology department anymore, but we do great work in sociology and we produce great sociologists, but we don't have a sociology department. Who's from geology? Geology. Geosciences, well, we don't have a geology department, we don't have a geosciences department, but we do fantastic work studying the Earth and studying other planetary bodies in our School of Earth and Space Exploration. Because we don't want to be constrained, unless we think we need to be constrained, by a historical construct. Socially embedded, number 7, means working at the level of the community, at the level of the street. Now, I'm not going to bore you with a lot of stuff. I'm going to fly through something. So you'd say, okay, well, you get all this going, and how does it all work? Well, you got to change a bunch of things at the university to make this kind of thing work. You got to stop trying to operate the university as a machine or as a system, and I call it the managers of the general store. Most academic administrators are managers of the general store. What kind of candy would you like? Oh, what kind of cloth would you like to buy off the shelf? Meaning they're just running the process. And you have to get into the business of reconceptualizing the design of the institution. And you have to get your leaders, faculty leaders, administrators, and others to think like architects, to think like designers, driven by one objective, student success. How can we constantly innovate and re-engineer the institution in everything that we do to help our students to be maximally successful? We do that by making decisions. And let me just show you some of the things that we've been able to do in 10 years. And I wouldn't be able to have this conversation with you if this was all just rhetoric. But I've been at this institution for 10 years. Our management team has been in place. 5 individuals came with me from Columbia. All 5 of those individuals are still at ASU, still working 10 years later, advancing those aspects of the enterprise that we've gotten going, as well as dozens and dozens of others and thousands of faculty members that have been working at unbelievable. I'm so proud of our faculty. When we went through the same kind of financial stresses that you guys did, we had 55% of our funding on a per student basis eliminated from the state since April of 2009. And for us, that was $200 million to our base budget eliminated. And $100 million of it we had to come up with in 3 months and pay back to the state because of their financial situation. And our faculty, rather than go on furlough, we had furlough requirements, but no one went on furlough. They all legally agreed to work without pay by vote of our academic senate. Unbelievably dedicated individuals and unbelievably dedicated faculty. Now, what has that faculty been able to accomplish? So some of these things mean something and some of them don't. We're very happy to be in this Shanghai Jiaotong ranking, which is an output ranking done by the Chinese. We're in the top 100. We're very happy that the Wall Street Journal sees our students. So people say to us, well, are your students getting any jobs? Or does anybody care about anything that you're doing? Well, at least these 500 companies that were interviewed by the Wall Street Journal said that we were 5th. We do all right in these other kinds of things. That U.S. News and World Report thing, that's one of the most screwed up things ever done, ever created. It's mean-spirited and so forth. So we became obsessed with trying to get into what they call the first tier. We're at the very bottom of the first tier, and then we just mock all of the others. And so we have top programs and all kinds of things. And so let me just go back so I can show you one thing. So even this slide presentation, we set, given our vision and our aspirations, we set 4 goals, 4 specific goals. National Comprehensive University by 2012, and each of these sub-presentations are related to each of these goals. Access and quality for all, enhance our local community, and establish national standing for the university. So establish National Comprehensive University, that meant that we could tell everybody else to shut up. We did enough research to just be able to tell them, okay, we do enough of that research, so why don't you shut up about our quality? I'm just being very blunt about this. So like, we're as good as you, our faculty are as good as you. We just have a lot more students and we're more dedicated to public purpose than you are. And so why don't you just be quiet about our quality? Our quality is fine. So we attained that. We actually attained that in 2010 by our own estimation of setting our own standards. And so I just wanted to let you know what these 4 goals are, and we can come back to that. But I just wanted you to see what we had been able to accomplish, and I'll just sort of fly through this. So that's our flag, by the way. That's a sun in the middle of it. We don't know why they put that in there, but it's worked out okay. We've been able to hire great faculty. These are 3 of our Nobel. These are our 3 Nobel laureates, 2 of which won the prizes from the school, 1 of which we hired. These are the kinds of faculty that we've been able to hire on the same budget constraints you have, in the same model that you have, in the same world that you live in. These are the faculty that have been able to be added to the institution. We believe that basically the quality of the institution is determined by the interface between the faculty and the students, and ultimately transmitted from the faculty to the students. If the faculty think the university is no good, the students will think the university is no good. If the faculty think the university is good, the students will think the university is good. And so we think we have great students, but from a broad cross-section. So one of the arguments that we got, if we go down this path, nobody from the upper 10% from the UT Austin world will actually show up at your school. They'll only go to the other schools. And I said, well, you haven't done any math. You don't know how many of those kids there are. You just think there's the ones you get and there aren't any others. You think that just because you take kids from the upper 10%, you have all of them. Well, not true. We have 1/3 of our 9,200 freshmen from the upper 10% of the high school class. And so that sort of defeats that kind of argument. We have 1,000 freshmen, more than 1,000 freshmen from the upper 3% of their high school class. And this is what they do: Rhodes Scholars, Truman Scholars, Fulbright Scholars, outstanding number of National Merit Scholars, and so forth. This is all good stuff. I'm just trying to give you a sense that the model doesn't mean you're going to collapse and give stuff up. This gives you some sense of our scale. This is one of our graduations in 2009. And so you can see the scale of the increase of the rate, where we're going. So we're enhancing quality, growing size, expanding research, producing more graduates with unbelievable stresses, strains, fights, pains, arguments, wrestling matches, mud-slinging, everything that you can possibly imagine, faculty meltdowns, department crashes. But we still went from 8,100 graduates to 11,000 graduates, and then last year in 2011, these 2 numbers together were above 18,000. And by the way, our regents have set that target for us at 18,000 for 2019. Now figure that out, because they also set the target for us of $700 million a year of funded research in 2019. Now, that would choke most people to death if you sat around and thought about that as an objective. So it only partially chokes us, and we figure out how to figure it out. Diversity for us, you can see the changes in diversity in terms of changes in numbers. You can get some sense. Pell Grant eligible students. How many Pell Grant eligible students here are here, Risa or Mark? But what's the number? So we have 23,000 Pell Grant eligible undergraduates.
12,000.
Yeah, so we got a lot. You do too. It's a complicated world to take the bright kids that are coming from working class families like I did. I came from a family that would have been triple eligible for a Pell Grant. We would have loved to have income at the level that people have Pell Grants at. That would have been like fantastic. We wouldn't have had to take so much cheese from the government and peanut butter from green cans, but the university's got to be open for those smart kids also, because you know there's no distribution of ability based on income. It's pretty evenly distributed. We did attain this ranking, which we're happy to have attained, which is universities without medical schools were in the top 20 in terms of research expenditures, along with some of those other losers at the bottom. And so we're very happy about that. And these are kind of our strategic areas of research, and you can find all this on websites and so forth. The most important thing about these areas is that if somebody else is like doing a lot of it, forget it, don't even go into it. It's like already done, the race is over, you lost. And so you need to move in other areas. Research expenditures, we're exceeding our goal. This sort of shows you our trend, significant trend. And then I won't walk you through all this stuff. We do all kinds of crazy things, all kinds of projects. Now, what I want to do before we turn to questions, because I want to have as much dialogue as possible, is now if you design a university to do this, and you design around these design aspirations, and you structure it in a different way, it turns out that we think that this kind of institution can now just sort of head off on its own and not worry so much about the fact that you're no good compared to Ann Arbor, or that University of Indiana at Bloomington is better than Arizona State by somebody's estimation from some model that was created in 1960. Who cares? What are you doing in your community? What challenges are you taking on that you can uniquely, within your community, your city, your Metro Atlanta is the size of Singapore. Georgia has an economy larger than most countries. I don't know if you ever saw the Economist's magazine ranking of the states by what economies of the world match the American economy. So Arizona, which is a little bit smaller than Georgia, our economy is bigger than Thailand's. Bigger than Argentina. People don't grasp this. The economy of the county that I live in is larger than the economy of the United Arab Emirates, which is apparently one of the world's richest Gulf states that we somehow think of as some fabulously wonderful thing, that's some superpower that's going to overtake us, and they don't have the economy quite the size of Maricopa County, Arizona. And they also don't have ASU. So anyway, if you design a university to work this way, well, what would it do? What would be the challenges that it focuses on? So I'm going to show you a 4-minute video if we can down the house lights. Is that possible? I don't know if those guys back in that room can hear anything. One of them is moving. There we go. He's got his hand on something. Okay, great. So I'm just going to show you now. Just imagine. So like, by the way, like, we have a foundation. We raise money. We don't have a campaign. We're not trying to raise money for the library. We don't. Where's the university librarian? Yeah. And so we have a lot of money to put in the library, but we're not going to go out and say, oh, please, will you give us little plaques so we can put on the back of the chairs of the library, or things like that. Or can you give us money so we can recloth the chairs in the big auditorium? No. We want to actually have people invest in us so that we can do this kind of stuff right here. So this video is the product of a bottom-up community, student, faculty engagement process on what do we think are the great challenges that the university can approach and address and move toward. And then it goes to, if you go to the site, it goes then to an interactive website where you then, as a member of the community, whatever level of the member, you could be just a citizen out there, you then engage with your challenges and so forth. And then what we've done with these challenges, just to give you some sense of how we work, we just created within our foundation a unit that we call, it has a very complex name, it's called Solutions. And so we hired one of our former deans who went away to be a college president, and then we hired him back after he did that to run this unit called Solutions. And what it is we're taking assets and faculty, talent, and ideas from everywhere we can find it around the university, and we're finding solutions to each of those challenges. We picked 5 areas to focus on. The 5 are very unusual. One is new teacher. One is new city, but unique to our kind of city. One is new health outcome. Again, all the disciplines are involved in this. One is better decisions and better designs. And one is new university. And we intend to raise about, over the next few years, about $400 million for each of those 5 areas. Don't know if we will or not, but we're going to try. And so it just gives you a sense of how we're working and how we're moving things forward and so forth. So your sister institution is not the University of Georgia. It's not Georgia Tech. It's definitively not Emory. Or what's that other funny one around here? Oglethorpe. It's us, meaning institutions that are devoted, and other institutions like us, to this mission of excellence, this mission of access, and this mission of impact, all combined in the same place, right at the front line, where you're not saying to this kid who has a 1200 SAT test score and a 3.6 high school grade point exam, well, I'm really, or 3.6 grade point from high school, I'm really ever so sorry we don't have any room for you. So you have to go to blah, 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 blah. I'm ever so sorry. Because we've got, if you want to be here, we got room for you. If you want to work hard, we got room for you. So that's why we have, let's see, well, 23,000 more undergraduates than we used to 8 years ago. So, thank you. And if Oglethorpe listens to this, I'm just having fun. So questions, right, Risa? Yes. Okay. And if people could just sort of say who they are and sort of where they hang out, that would be useful for me. And where's Greg Lewis? Is he still in here? Greg and I were old student colleagues back at the Maxwell School in Syracuse like 30 years ago. It wasn't about that far back. Yes.
Hi, I'm Jennifer McCoy from Political Science, and I'd like to hear more about the financial model. One, how you were able to increase the research funding so dramatically, where you got the money for the infrastructure to base that increase on, and 2, generally, how you've been able to increase, particularly with state budgets declining. Where is the money coming from to do all these wonderful things?
Well, it's coming from, I can give you sort of the blunt answer. So the blunt answer, it's coming from successful implementation of massive enrollment growth with simultaneous massive increase in tuition, with simultaneous massive increase in financial aid, leaving no one out, netting out. There is no state-based financial aid in Arizona, and there's no capital budgeting in Arizona from the state to the universities, except for special projects, I think every 140th lunar cycle or something like that, meaning it's unpredictable and based on some term of time, I don't know what it is. And so So we did it by generating new revenue. So we've taken institutional revenue in 10 years from $800 million a year to $2 billion a year. Now, when you increase $1.2 billion of revenue, even though you're losing state revenue, so we enhanced our revenue by large numbers of out-of-state students, large numbers of international students. That then gave us the ability to hire faculty. And then it's which faculty do you hire? And you're hiring them for what? You're hiring them just to run the same old thing, then you'll just get the same old result. And so it's hiring faculty into these new structures, into these new models, into these new, so we now, I didn't put the list up, so we now have a School of Earth and Space Exploration, a School of Sustainability, and there's political scientists in all of these. We have engineers in our political science faculty and political scientists in our School of Human Evolution and Social Change, our School of Family and Social Dynamics, our School of Trans-Border Studies, our School of whatever. I mean, these long list of changes. So we were hiring faculty with new resources from successfully migrating the university to a different platform that allowed us to empower the faculty that we had, as well as hire new faculty that could also empower the faculty that we had. And so it was really through designing the institution to be a higher performing research enterprise. So in one area, not exactly related to political science, but there's political scientists involved in this, our Center for Religion and Conflict, which is made up of faculty from religious studies, political science, economics, philosophy, history, languages, communications, and a few other departments or schools. We gave seed funding of $250,000 a year to a single faculty member and said, do all that you can to try to get faculty members working together in a new way around basically all of the stresses and the strains between the three great Abrahamic religions. And so it turns out that now, 7 years later, they've secured $10 million in funding, including a $7 million Minerva grant from the Department of Defense. And this was from people that, at that time, had never won an external award in anything, ever. And so it's from sort of bringing people together, breaking down the barriers, funding seed grants, sticking with it. So if you got a seed grant from us, it was for 5 years. 5 years. So you had 5 years to make something happen. So we're not unrealistic, you know, it's not like unrealistic. I learned a lot about how long it takes to do things at Columbia, believe me. And so, I mean, a long time. I worked for 11 years on one project. That's my 11 years. This one other guy told me, he said, we eliminated this one department just as I was leaving. And he says, I said, you know, we worked for 7 years to get rid of one department at Columbia that had never accomplished anything, was doing nothing. And he says, now that you're out of here, we can get it set up again. I mean, it's like, because it was in that faculty member's self-interest to view the world that way, as opposed to the university's interest or the student's interest. So the way that we built the research activity also, and the dean and I were talking about this morning, was by the establishment of theme-oriented, like our Global Institute of Sustainability involves 250 faculty members from 40 different units. And they work together in ways that they never worked together before, and lo and behold, guess what happens? Well, I think we've won, in the last 10 years, we've won IGERTs, you know what those are, the Interdisciplinary Graduate Research, I think we've won 7. 7 of them. Well, that's because the faculty members, like, they weren't even talking to each other. They actually believed that they lived in these little tiny things. And that the political science, remember I grew up in political science, so the political scientists, you can't talk to these other people. Or engineers are foreign, or economists are elitist snobs, or whatever any economists? You're not really elitist snobs, but some other people think you are. And so that's, you had to break that down. Our methodology was breaking down if you don't change the structure of the institution, nothing will change. It will not change.
My name is, can you hear me? Can you hear me now? Good. My name is Cora Presley. I'm Senior Faculty Associate for Underrepresented Faculty working out of Dr. Palm's office, and I'm also an Associate Professor in African American Studies and an Affiliate Faculty in Women's Studies. Thank you very much for your remarks, first of all. And you did a slide very quickly that showed the increasing diversity for your university, and I did have a chance to write down that you had an 84% increase in your African American student population.
Yes.
But we haven't had an 84% insignificant increase, but since I came here, a significant increase in the percentage of minority students. And my question to you is, how has the university coped or adjusted or planned for changes in the curriculum, in campus life, in climate, and in faculty representation of minority groups, given your dramatic changes?
Well, I mean, what we've really focused on is commitment to the outcome. So this commitment to access is the first step of a commitment to an outcome, which is to, from our perspective, it's to graduate kids from any family background imaginable, economic, ethnic, family type, family structure, whatever, and to design the university to have, the most significant thing that we've done has not been so much, we have hired a large number of minority faculty members, and we're doing very well in that, never as well as we would like, but significant improvement, significant numbers, significant hiring, but that's not the primary thing that one needs to do to be successful. What one needs to do to be successful in this arena, from my perspective, is to offer a wide diversity of highly energized, successful learning environments that are not routinized and boring, that have opportunities for students to find a pathway. So we offer these mechanisms for students to find multiple pathways, to be interested in coming to the university and to be successful as they advance in the university. We took all of our ethnic studies programs and eliminated them. And we created the School of Social Transformation, which has an intellectual foundation in the process of social transformation, the history of social transformation, the stresses and the strains and the dynamics, and trying to lay down theory about social transformation. And it's a very successful school. We created a new school we have a School of Trans-Border Studies, trying to deal with the very complex relationship between, in particular, Mexico and the United States and all of the issues that we have in Arizona. So we've created learning environments where some kids will be attracted to that and feel very happy and successful in those programs, and it would take me too long to walk you through all the programs, but it's really been an approach built around the concept of intellectual diversification. We think that the institutions have been, yes, insufficiently diverse from the people perspective, but that's not enough. It's not just that, it's intellectual diversification. It's the breadth of the programs, the types of the programs, the acceptance of ranges of learning modalities, and the acceptance of broad cultural differences, and creating an institution that can accept all of that under one umbrella. So we've really tried to do that. I'm not deciding who's talking, so somebody should just give them the microphone.
You talk a lot about changing I'm Richard Phillips, and I'm probably more elitist than a business, because I'm in a business school, not an economist.
Yes. Unless, like, our economics department is in our business school. So.
Well, yeah.
Go on.
We got rid of them about 15 years ago.
So with us, what we never understand, every time the provost and I read tenure cases, if any of our business school faculty are looking at this, you need to understand we worry about this. You guys make a lot of money, buddy.
I'm not the one wearing the tie.
Yeah.
My question is exactly to this point, though. You've talked a lot about changing institutional structures to create the outcomes that you were looking for. But my experience is that a lot of this is driven by the incentives that are given to individual faculty.
Well, now you're just talking about the methodology.
Well, I'm talking about the methodology. I'm talking about how do you incent faculty to open their door and be not just interested about what it is that you're talking about, but that they'll engage in it. How do you reward them engaging in it? It can't be just simply teaching research and service, can it? I mean,
we don't ever use those phrases.
I understand that. So that's what I'd like you to talk a little bit about.
So we give the money to the people that want to do the new things, and we don't give any money to the other people. And so
who do you tenure?
Who do we tenure? Those that are recognized by others other than us for having done something that's unusual.
Thank you.
And so what we use is we use resources to drive change. We use incentives to drive change. Every dean of our 15 deans, we operate on a single university basis, not campuses, even though we have campuses. We just have our colleges are spread out. And so we say to them, you have the following financial incentives. Departments have financial incentives. Individual faculty members have financial incentives. We have no grades for faculty employment. We have no automatic promotions. We've never given, in the 10 years I've been there, a cost of living raise. We've only given merit raises, period. There are no other types of raises, none. And so that doesn't mean that we haven't given raises to lots of people. We have, not in the last 4 years, but but we have. So we use, it's not a business model per se, but we use an incentive-driven model with deans and chairs and directors who are responsible in leadership roles, and then we take money away. So if you don't meet your objectives, money is taken away, and if you don't meet your objectives a second time, you're taken away, meaning that you're replaced. And so, as at least an executive, go back and write your papers. And so, that's how we work. Yep.
Hello, I'm an assistant professor in the history department. I teach North African and Qatari history, actually. Just had a book come out on that. I have a question about the problem of the issue of standards getting in the way of creativity, especially when it comes to a situation we have here in Georgia called the Hope Scholarship. Students are so desperate to keep their grades in order to keep a Hope Scholarship that they maybe don't engage as creatively, or they don't take classes that are more challenging. And I'm wondering how you might deal with that, how you don't create standards in a way that actually block people from.
So we operate under the following premise: not everybody believes that we never blame the student.
Okay.
Ever. The student is, I don't want to use the word child, but the student is the emerging adult. We, the faculty, if the students aren't taking the right classes and they're not doing the right thing, it's not their fault. They're just developing semi-rational thinkers. And so it's really, what we've really tried to do, that's the one of these that I have up here called Enable Student Success, number 5, is by making the institution, one of the things I think, if I get run over by a bus out here on the street and don't make it back to Phoenix, there'll be some people very happy, and my wife will hopefully be unhappy, but nonetheless, the thing that I think that we've done successfully is we've changed the institution from a faculty-centric enterprise, where all of the comments are about, well, you know, the students, they just don't, I'm not picking on you, but they don't take the right thing, or they're not well prepared, or they're not as good as the students that I had when I was at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, or you know, whatever other school any of the faculty came from here. Okay, well, you're here, and these are the students you have. And if they're not doing the right thing, it's not their fault. It's our fault. And so, not 100% of the time, but 98% of the time, because there's always some knuckleheads out there that, you know, even if you sort of lead them in the right direction, they can't get it done. But so I just think that that we all have to, not just the history department at GSU, but we all have to think about, if the kids really aren't taking the exciting courses, maybe we don't really know what an exciting course is. If they're not really attracted to chemistry and stuff like that, maybe there's something actually in the way chemistry is being taught that just makes it profoundly agonizing to take it. And so what else can we do about that? And so I'm just a big believer on the sort of Michael Jackson logic, you know, of look in the mirror. Look in the mirror, and what are we doing? If the kids aren't doing the right thing, what are we doing to adjust? And if you try it once or twice or 3 times and you see some adjustments, that's correct. And if it doesn't work, then you maybe have a more fundamental issue, and maybe it is in fact the Hope Scholarship Program in the state of Georgia, you know, got everybody to take nothing but basket weaving to get through the university. But I hope that's not the case, because those basket weaver faculty over there are just really happy they have so much student credit hours.
This is the last question.
Hi, yes, my name is Christopher McKinney. I'm a senior political science major. And I was wondering, have students been involved at all with the planning process and with trying to implement, as far as, I want to say, like behind the scenes at all? And my second question is, what has been the most difficult part and why?
So the first part, so students are heavily involved. We have 5 student government elected leaders. The student body president at the Tempe campus represents 50,000 students, just to give you some sense of that person's role. And so we don't engage them in things that as our provost will say, the faculty and the teachers and the professors, we can actually sort of determine the direction of the programs and so forth. And so the students aren't so much involved in that. What we ask the students to provide leadership to us on is to constantly be telling us what they want. So we basically go through a negotiation. We want your support for our tuition increase, which we've had for the last 3 years. Support from the students for our tuition increase. We sit with the students, meeting after meeting, including me. It's a fantastic experience, very productive. What do you want? Well, we want this, we want this, we want this, we want this. We'd like the library to be open 24 hours. Okay, where's what that costs? You want to have the library open 24 hours. We'd like to have, infinite access to memory, or we'd like to have this wireless network, or we'd like for the labs to be whatever. And so they have a long list of things that they want related to security, related to parking, related to this, related to that. And we basically meet with them and negotiate an investment strategy around new tuition revenue that will deliver what we need to advance the university and will deliver the things that we agree to on their box, the things on their box. Now, we've also tried to engage the students in ways where, so we've just had several successful things. We're building right now $120 million of new rec centers, $130 million, on different sites around the university, all funded by student fees, all generated through student government, all driven by student engagement. And we really like that. In the business school, remember, we don't have any funding from the state. So we needed a new $60 million addition to the business school. We have 11,500 business students, and it's kind of getting overcrowded over there. So we needed new facilities and new structure and so forth. So we raised $20 million. It's a $60 million building, and then the students assessed a fee on themselves through their own political action to assess themselves a fee capable of building that building. So now we have a financing stream. Now we learned that at the University of Colorado at Boulder, where the law school and the business school were completely financed by self-imposed student fees. And so it's not about students wanting to be involved so much in some particular part of an academic process. They're involved in making the university a better place. And they have a list of things that they think will make it a better place. The graduate students wanted travel money. The graduate students wanted a graduate student center. The graduate students wanted this or this or this. Okay, well, do you support this tuition increase or not? Yes, then you'll get those things. That means we'll have the money to do them. Here's our present, we sit with them, we have interactive budget sites, we work through the budget models, we meet with these student leaders. I have 8 town hall meetings a year with just students in rooms like this where we're talking about issues, and then we beam in the other campuses and the other schools, and so that's what we're after. We tried to raise the level of the debate. And then to the second question that you had, which is what's been the biggest challenge? The biggest challenge is sort of two parts to it. One is people thinking that all the great universities are already known. I'm like, back to our history faculty member here of North Africa. No. The great universities of the 21st century are yet to be determined. I don't know what the 21st century needs for a great university, but I know that it's not going to be the exact same thing that was needed in the 18th century or the 19th century or the 11th century. But there's a lot of people that think that it is. It just can't be. There's too many variables, too many things going on. And so that's a huge challenge to get people to understand that it's not a static enterprise. It's a dynamic enterprise. And the greatest challenge is getting faculty and others to be able to see that it's a dynamic enterprise, not a static enterprise. And I think the second most significant challenge is that everybody that comes out of PhD programs all come out of PhD programs partly ruined. So yeah, you've gone through this thing, including me, where you're like, no, that's too broad, narrow, 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 narrow. No, get your problem down to this narrowest possible thing. So my PhD dissertation was on the dynamics of market forces and public sector policymaking forces on arcane R&D laboratories and their ability to change their knowledge production profiles based on those various forces. I mean, Greg, what was yours on? Pretty narrow. Important, but narrow, right? And so that narrowness that we all come into academia with is painfully self-defeating unless you can get people to bifurcate or trifurcate their mind, which is, can you be that narrow, focused academic trying to do that thing in the space that you grew up in? And can you also then, as a result of that, be willing to engage with other people and to engage in new ways of doing things? And many academics, maybe even most, have a hard time with that. They have a hard time with that. And it goes to culture and tradition and all kinds of things. And so those are the two biggest challenges. And then you can always throw in the challenge of living in the Wild West. But we've tried to use that to our advantage. So thank you.